Welcome. Tonight, we'll journey back through time to explore a story of endurance, resilience, and the quiet rhythms of life in one of the most unforgiving landscapes ever faced by humankind. Imagine, if you will, the endless expanse of ice stretching far beyond the horizon, pale under a muted wintry sun. The air is sharp, yet still, carrying a hush that seems almost sacred. This is the stage for a tale that is at once harsh and profoundly human. Sir Ernest Shackleton's Antarctic expedition. As you settle in, allow your mind to soften, your breathing to slow. Let the ordinary world drift away, and with it, the clatter of your day. We will move gently, hour by hour, across the frozen plains and into the intimate, often unnoticed details of life aboard the Endurance. You will hear of cold, of hunger, and of the remarkable ways humans adapt, survive, and endure, not in bursts of drama, but in the steady rhythm of daily life. Picture yourself as a silent observer, floating just beyond the camp, sensing the cold biting through woolen layers, the quiet scrape of ice under boots, the faint aroma of seal oil heating over a stove. Together we will wander through the icy stillness, where every small action, every routine, carries the weight of survival. Let us begin. The first thing to understand about Shackleton's expedition is the monotony. It is not the kind of monotony that is restful. Rather, it is a repetitive, unrelenting rhythm that stretches across weeks and months. Imagine a vessel trapped in solid ice, the hull creaking under the strain. The Endurance is immobilized, a great wooden carcass frozen into the sea, and yet life continues inside. Morning begins in the soft, muted light that creeps through the portholes. The men rise from narrow hammocks, shivering slightly in the dim warmth of the cabin. Wool blankets and layers are pulled tight, a feeble barrier against the persistent cold. The scent of melting snow mixes with the pungent temps of seal fat from the previous day's meal. Water, precious and slow to gather, drips steadily from ice blocks. Every drop is a small, deliberate effort, part of the careful economy of life aboard the Endurance. Breakfast is simple, almost ritualized. Biscuits, sometimes a thin porridge, warmed over a small stove. Tea is more than comfort. It is a small anchor of normalcy. Each sip warms hands chilled to a dull ache and carries the faint, grounding aroma of leaves that traveled thousands of miles from distant lands. Conversation drifts quietly among the men, low-toned murmurs about the day ahead. Observations of the ice, the weather, or the odd habits of their companions. Laughter is rare, but cherished, a fleeting warmth in an otherwise muted world. Tasks are constant, yet understated. Equipment is inspected, sails repaired, tools oiled. Every rope, every nail, every hinge might determine survival in the days to come. Even the act of shoveling snow to clear pathways becomes a measured meditation, a repetition that numbs the fingers but engages the mind. Outside, the ice groans, as if alive, shifting imperceptibly, reminding them of the slow, relentless movement of their frozen prison. Meals are punctuated by small rituals: the careful rationing of biscuits and canned goods, the scraping of utensils to collect every last crumb, the slow, thoughtful chewing that stretches sustenance further. The taste of preserved meat, sometimes chewy and stiff, is tempered by the warmth of tea or chocolate, creating brief moments of pleasure amidst necessity. As night falls, the frozen silence outside deepens. The men retreat to their hammocks or the narrow bunks, careful not to disturb the fragile balance of heat. They pull their layers tight, listening to the faint creak of the ship as ice shifts or the whisper of the wind over the frozen plain. Sleep comes slowly, a merciful descent into warmth and dreams where the cold cannot reach. In these routines, in the small, almost imperceptible motions of daily life, endurance is practiced. Not in grand gestures, but in the quiet, constant, and deliberate attention to survival. Each action, repeated day after day, is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit against a landscape that is indifferent, vast, and beautifully silent. And here, in the monotony and small victories, the rhythm of life establishes itself, a slow, measured cadence that paradoxically offers a strange comfort. Imagine, if you will, a man of quiet determination, not striking in appearance, radiating a calm resolve that carries him and those around him through unimaginable circumstances. Sir Ernest Shackleton was born in 1874 in County Kildare, Ireland, into a world that already demanded resilience. As a boy, he learned discipline, precision, perseverance qualities that would become essential when facing the stark, frozen emptiness of the Antarctic. Shackleton was not alone in his fascination with exploration. The early 20th century was a period of great ambition, where nations and individuals competed to reach the uncharted, to stand at the edges of the known world. Yet unlike some of his contemporaries, Shackleton's focus was less on glory and more on the human capacity to endure. He understood that leadership was not measured by accolades, but by the quiet, often unnoticed decisions that preserved life. The Endurance set sail from South Georgia in August of 1914. Imagine the bustling harbor, the smell of salt and coal, the clatter of ropes against masts, and the murmurs of men bracing themselves for months in isolation. The ship, sturdy and well-crafted, was a wooden fortress against the unknown, yet fragile against the immense power of ice. Weeks passed, and the landscape transformed. The open ocean gradually surrendered to floating ice floes, and the air grew sharper, more insistent in its cold. By January 1915, the Endurance was trapped, frozen into the Weddell Sea. Shackleton, fully aware of the gravity of the situation, calmly organized his crew. He assessed not just their immediate needs: shelter, warmth, food, but also the mental and emotional state of the men. Each individual was carefully observed, their habits noted, small victories recognized. Shackleton's leadership was subtle, yet profound. Imagine him walking the icy decks in the soft, gray light of dawn, boots crunching against hardened snow, the wind tugging at his coat. He would speak quietly to men struggling with despair, offering reassurance not in grand speeches, but in the steady presence of someone who would not falter. The ice outside seemed immovable, yet within this frozen prison, a careful order emerged. Routines maintained, duties distributed, morale tended with almost imperceptible gestures. Days stretched into weeks, and weeks into months. The men adapted to the unending white landscape, learning to read the ice and the weather as a mariner reads the stars. Supplies dwindled, yet their ingenuity grew. Trapped in this frozen tableau, they hunted seals and penguins, preserving meat and blubber with meticulous care. Every act peeling ice from a kettle, trimming the edges of a worn boot, sharing a small portion of chocolate was imbued with significance. The journey of the Endurance, while marked by hardship, was also a chronicle of human ingenuity and endurance. Shackleton's decision to abandon the ship before it was crushed was not one of panic, but of foresight. He organized lifeboats and sledges, preparing for the inevitable march across the ice. Picture the meticulous packing, supplies divided into neat parcels, equipment lashed securely, every item chosen with care to preserve life rather than ambition. Throughout this ordeal, Shackleton remained an anchor, a steady presence amidst uncertainty. He understood the subtle truths of survival, that courage is measured not in daring feats, but in daily acts of consistency, that hope can be preserved in small comforts, and that the human spirit, like a candle in the wind, can endure if shielded carefully. By late 1915, the Endurance had been swallowed entirely by the ice, yet remarkably, not a single life was lost. Shackleton's calm decisiveness, combined with the crew's adaptability, allowed them to navigate the treacherous expanse, eventually reaching safety after months of painstaking travel. Their story, a quiet testament to leadership, foresight, and resilience, endures not because of a single dramatic act, but because of countless small, deliberate choices made in the frozen stillness. Now imagine the vast, silent expanse beyond the Endurance. A land and sea, almost untouched, yet full of subtle stories waiting to be discovered. Antarctica is not only ice and snow. It is a landscape layered with enigmas, whispers of the past, and traces of human curiosity. As the crew of the Endurance navigated its frozen reaches, they were also unwitting explorers of this cultural and natural mystery. Consider the ice itself. It is a slow-moving archive, each layer a record of centuries past. Snowfall compacts, shifts, and preserves a memory of winds, temperatures, and storms. Beneath the surface, glaciers hold tiny fragments of ancient life, microscopic fossils, and traces of prehistoric climates. To modern scientists, these layers are a kind of history book, written in ice rather than ink. Imagine running your fingers across a wall of compacted snow, knowing that within it lies the memory of millennia. Even the wildlife of this remote continent offers glimpses into its hidden narrative. Emperor penguins, standing tall in their silent colonies, perform rituals of survival that echo generations past. Seals haul themselves onto ice floes, their quiet presence a reminder that life persists even in the harshest conditions. The crew of the Endurance observed these creatures with both curiosity and reverence, learning from their rhythms and behaviors, noting patterns that were at once practical for survival and quietly beautiful. Antarctica also holds human mysteries. Long before Shackleton, explorers and whalers left ephemeral traces, makeshift camps, abandoned equipment, and inscriptions etched into wood or ice. These are subtle artifacts of human ambition and perseverance, reminders that even in the coldest, most isolated places, people leave marks of their presence. Archaeologists today study these relics not for glory, but to understand the lived experiences of those who endured similarly harsh conditions. Each fragment an iron stove, a tattered journal, a footprint preserved in snow tells a story of resilience, ingenuity, and adaptation. There are also the whispered stories that never fully appear in records, tales of sudden storms that swallowed entire ice floes, of compass needles spinning unpredictably under the influence of magnetic forces, of the eerie, almost otherworldly light that flickers across the ice at dawn or dusk. The auroras, with their pale, drifting colors, would have seemed at once mesmerizing and slightly unnerving to Shackleton's men. Imagine watching those ribbons of green and purple ripple silently above the frozen horizon, a quiet spectacle that speaks to the planet's deep mysteries. Even culture, in this barren expanse, found its expression. Shackleton's crew brought music, letters, sketches, and books. On long, still nights, a man might quietly strum a guitar, or another might read aloud from a cherished volume. These acts, simple and unobtrusive, became rituals that preserved their humanity, connecting them to the broader world and to each other. Humor, storytelling, and shared reflection were forms of subtle archaeology. Preserving culture within the isolation, a delicate layering of experience that would later illuminate history. In this segment of our journey, we see that Antarctica is more than frozen desolation. It is a quiet keeper of secrets, a canvas upon which human and natural history intertwine. Its mysteries are not shocking or alarming, but they are persistent, patient, and profound. The ice conceals and reveals slowly, teaching us that endurance is not just physical height, it is also mental, emotional, and cultural. And as you imagine these frozen expanses, the soft crunch of snow underfoot, the distant echo of seals, the ethereal dance of auroras above, you may feel a gentle curiosity stirring within, quiet wonder that does not demand excitement, but simply observation and reflection. Imagine the narrow corridors and wooden decks of the Endurance as a small, floating society. In such close quarters, hierarchy is unavoidable, yet it is tempered by necessity and shared hardship. Shackleton's role as leader was clear, but within the crew, subtle distinctions shaped daily life. Officers and men each had tasks, but the success of one depended upon the efforts of all. There were no luxurious privileges. Comfort was scarce, warmth was hard-earned, and yet small differences in responsibility and routine quietly defined the social rhythm. The officers, for example, were often responsible for navigation, the organization of supplies, and the meticulous record-keeping that would later preserve this expedition for posterity. Imagine them hunched over charts in the dim light, fingers tracing frozen coastlines, the scent of ink and paper mingling with smoke from the stove. Their work was precise, demanding both patience and foresight, and while it carried authority, it also carried a profound weight, the knowledge that any miscalculation could imperil lives. The men, in contrast, were tasked with labor that was physically demanding, often repetitive and quietly heroic. Hauling sledges, chopping ice, maintaining stoves, and preparing meals for the whole crew required endurance of a different kind. There was little room for distinction and comfort. Yet the rhythm of labor created its own structure, a cadence that allowed men to measure time and preserve sanity. Imagine the synchronized scraping of ice, the low hum of conversation, the occasional murmur of laughter, subtle markers of morale. Small reminders that life continued even in confinement. Camaraderie became both a survival mechanism and a source of quiet joy. Men shared stories, sketches, or small performances. A joke at the table, the lending of a book, the passing of a blanket. These gestures, seemingly minor, were profound in the context of isolation. Social bonds were tested and strengthened in the daily rhythm of shared struggle, forming a tapestry of human connection that endured even under extreme duress. Contrasts emerged not in extravagance, but in perspective. Men found solace in ritual, the meticulous care of boots, the quiet sharpening of knives, or the folding of blankets with near meditative attention. Others sought engagement in shared leisure, a chess game, a reading session, or a discussion of distant lands they longed to visit. These contrasting approaches, solitary ritual versus shared activity, created a dynamic balance aboard the Endurance. Life was not uniform, yet every contribution mattered, every habit shaped the collective experience. Even in such a confined society, hierarchy was tempered by shared vulnerability. Illness, fatigue, and exposure affected all equally. Respect was earned not only through rank, but through reliability, ingenuity, and the ability to endure quietly. A man who maintained composure in the bitter cold, who offered a steady hand in a crisis, commanded attention and trust, regardless of official title. Leadership was therefore both formal and fluid, anchored in responsibility and the quiet demonstration of resilience. As the expedition progressed, subtle shifts in social dynamics became apparent. Men adapted to the extremes, creating their own codes of etiquette and cooperation. The distribution of labor, the informal mentoring of younger men, and the small acknowledgments of effort became a ritual that preserved order and morale. Imagine the soft murmur of these interactions beneath the creak of ice-bound timbers. It's the smell of seal oil in the mess hall and the low light of lanterns flickering against wooden walls. In these contrasts, duty and leisure, leadership and labor, solitude and camaraderie, the essence of human endurance reveals itself. Even as the ice pressed against the hull and storms raged beyond the decks, this small society persisted. The contrasts in daily life between work and rest, authority and companionship, personal ritual and shared activity formed the invisible scaffolding that allowed the crew to survive and thrive under conditions few could imagine. In the quiet reflection of the night, as hammocks creaked and the wind whispered over the ice, each man understood the subtle truth. Survival depended on both individual resilience and the delicate balance of human connection. As we draw near the end of our journey across ice and time, imagine yourself once more standing on the frozen expanse, the soft crunch of snow. Beneath your boots, the pale light of the Antarctic sun stretching endlessly before you. The Endurance lies behind, a silent monument to human ingenuity, resilience, and quiet courage. We have wandered through the routines of daily life aboard a frozen vessel, felt the subtle rhythms of labor and survival, and glimpsed the meticulous decisions of Sir Ernest Shackleton, decisions made not in haste, but with patience, foresight, and unwavering care. We have traced the contours of mystery in the Antarctic ice, imagined the whispers of ancient glaciers and the silent presence of emperor penguins, felt the subtle traces of human culture preserved even in the harshest conditions. Finally, we explored the social fabric of life aboard the Endurance, where hierarchy and labor, ritual and leisure, solitude and camaraderie existed in delicate balance. In these contrasts, we see the quiet triumphs of human connection, the shared warmth of a blanket, the comforting sound of a low conversation, the mutual support that allows life to persist even when the world outside is unyielding. And now, as your mind drifts slowly toward rest, let yourself carry one enduring thought. Endurance is not always measured in grand gestures or heroic feats. Often it is found in small, deliberate acts, the careful tending of daily tasks, the patience to observe and adapt, the courage to support one another. In this quiet, measured rhythm, there is a profound lesson, not only for survival, but for living. Imagine the wind sighing across the ice, the muted colors of the aurora above, the gentle, unbroken hush of a frozen world. Let these images settle softly in your mind. Feel the calm they bring, the the quiet reassurance that life, even under immense challenge, persists through attention, care, and subtle human ingenuity. Allow your breathing to slow further, matching the steady, unhurried rhythm of life aboard the Endurance. Let your muscles relax, your mind wander gently, and your thoughts drift toward the soft comfort of sleep. The story of Shackleton and his men rests now in your imagination, a gentle reminder that resilience is cultivated quietly, patiently, and with steady resolve. As your eyelids grow heavy, as your thoughts settle like snow upon the endless ice, carry with you the calm, enduring cadence of the past, and let it guide you into a restful, restorative slumber. Good night.